This is Fountain
Every
Street
week I find
Church.
it hard to find the best ones, but somehow, like I said, you'll hear what I'm trying to say even when the words
Here,
aren't.
we strive to free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Here, there is freedom to doubt and freedom to believe. Here, you can find a house of prayer for all people.
The swallow up Jonah.
Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Join us on the journey.
First of all, I'm not Michael Travis. The part of the plant today will be played by Wright McCarger. Michael Travis is ill. But in way of another introduction, if you're not familiar with Little Shop, this is the point in the show when the plant has finally gotten big enough that Seymour can't feed him on his own little drops of blood anymore, and the plant has become animate. So I will be the plant today, and my friend Ryan Cupp is going to play Seymour. Ready? 2, 3, 4. Feed me.
Does it have to be human?
Feed me.
Does it have to be mine?
Feed me.
Where am I supposed to get it?
Feed me, Seymour. Feed me all night long. You can do it. Feed me, Seymour. Feed me all night long. 'Cause if you feed me, Seymour, I can grow up big and strong.
You're a plant, Audrey, too. Let's face it, how am I supposed to keep feeding you? Kill people?
Don't you worry, Seymour. You help me out, I'll give you anything your greasy little heart desires. How'd you like a Cadillac car or a guest shot on Jack Parr? How about a date with Hedy Lamarr? You're gonna get it. How'd you like to be a big wheel, dining out at every meal? I'm the plant that can make it all real. Gonna get it. I'm your genie, I'm your friend, I'm your willing slave. Take a chance and feed me, boy. You know the kind of eats, the kind of red hot treats, the kind of liquid beating sweets I say. Yeah. Come on, Seymour, don't be a putz. Trust me and your life will rival King Tut's. Show a little initiative, give it some guts, and you'll get it.
I don't know.
Come on, Seymour. There must be somebody out there you could 86 real quiet and get me some lunch. Think about a room at the Ritz, wrapped in velvet, covered in glitz. A little nook ain't gonna clean up your zits, and you'll get it.
Gee, I'd like a Harley machine, tooling around like I was James Dean, making all the guys on the corner turn green.
Now if you wanna be profound, if you really gotta testify, stop and think it over, pal. A lot of folks deserve to die.
Oh, wait a minute. That's not a very nice thing to say. I can't think of anybody who deserves to get chopped up and fed to a hungry plant.
Oh, sure you can. Go ahead, think it over now.
That dentist. If you want a rationale, it isn't very hard to see. Stop and think it over, pal. The guy sure looks like plant food to me. The guy sure looks like plant food to me. The guy sure looks like plant food to me. Yeah. He is nasty, treating her rough,
Rocking around and always talking so tough.
You got blood and he's got more than enough.
I need blood and he's got more than enough.
You need blood and he's got more than enough.
So go get it.
We could just have the benediction now and call it a morning. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Our governing board recently set 3 strategic goals for the congregation, and one of the goals is greater diversity. This morning I would like to explore the role that radical hospitality plays in increasing diversity in our church. And I would particularly note the struggles that Jewish and Christian communities across time have had with welcoming people felt to be unlike ourselves. I begin with 2 assumptions that I would imagine most agree with. First of all, I assume that those here who were shaped and formed by Christianity have some sense that we must practice generosity, hospitality, forgiveness, and justice to those who are unlike us, even when they inconvenience us. Second, my assumption is that we are called to do that both in face-to-face charity in the private sector and in the public domain of government and corporate life. The reason I say that is that people love to have debates about whether it ought to be the business of government or the business of the private sector, and it seems to me that it must always be both and. So I want to begin with that affirmation that the church is compelled to practice generosity, hospitality, forgiveness, and justice, to embrace others who are unlike us. But we live in a society that is increasingly anxious and therefore wants to be exclusionary. Who would have thought 40 years ago that we'd be building a wall around our territory to keep other people out? My home state of North Carolina is going to start printing a bold pink stripe on the driver's licenses of immigrants, giving a whole new meaning to the concept of showing some ID. So I think we have to ask, who are these others? How did we get into this fix about wanting to be exclusionary when we have this long practice of receiving immigrants and outsiders and strangers? And how do we get past that anxiety so that we can freely offer radical hospitality that by its very nature leads to greater diversity? My inspiration for these reflections is both the governing board's goal and a talk I heard a few weeks ago in Ottawa County by my favorite Old Testament scholar, someone I've mentioned before at Fountain Street. Walter Brueggemann shared 2 powerful observations about the Old Testament and drew attention to several amazing texts, and I would like to share a little bit of that with you this morning. The first thing I want to observe is that lots of the Old Testament is exclusionary and coercive about rejecting people who are not like us. In the case of the Old Testament, who are not like Israelites. Spend any time at all with the Hebrew Scriptures, and there's no getting around it. It's exclusionary. So that's the first point. The second point is that the Old Testament engages in imagination that counters and subverts that exclusion, so that there is a noticeable tension in the Old Testament. And in some ways, that tension runs right through the New Testament and into the history of the church, of wanting on the one hand to exclude others, and on the other hand to welcome them. So I want to talk about 3 others. The first other are the economic others. Those who stand outside of our settled patterns of production and who are mostly unwelcome because they don't pay taxes, they don't carry their weight, and we want to exclude them in all the ways we can. In the Old Testament, there are 4 such economic others. One scholar who used to teach here at Calvin has called this the quadrilateral of vulnerability. These are the vulnerable people in the Old Testament. They are widows, orphans, sojourners, sometimes that's translated immigrants or aliens, and the poor. These are the four. And you get the fourfold formula all the time. These are the people who have no economic power. They have no legal standing. And in a patriarchal society, they have no male advocate. And therefore, they are very vulnerable. So, for example, in the 23rd chapter of Proverbs, we read, "Do not remove ancient landmarks or encroach on the field of an orphan." So you could imagine some smart lawyers or big business or eminent domain would want to take advantage of a piece of property that was controlled by an orphan who didn't have the resources to defend it. So this is a kind of wise saying in the book of Proverbs that says, you can't move that boundary, because if you move that boundary and take away his land, you're going to cause social disorder.